Good morning. You know, we all hope that a decision will be forthcoming on delisting very, very soon. And my hope is that that decision is made on two basic principles. Number one, we should decide on the merits. We should not make a political deal. We should decide on the merits of the case. Number two, we should make our decision based on the values that this country has stood for so long, freedom and democracy. If the decision is made on those two criteria, MEK shall be and will be delisted. Now, this decision is going to be made by two people, basically, Secretary Clinton and President Obama. And they both are lawyers. They're both pretty good lawyers. They may not be as good a lawyer as General Mukasey, but they're good lawyers. And I would ask them, as we did at the rally before the State Department, I would ask the White House and the State Department to look at this as a legal case, because it is. You're interpreting the rules set up by the original delisting standards. Look at it as a legal case, and let's examine the evidence. In law, there's something called expert witnesses, and juries are allowed to give tremendous credence to expert witnesses, and that credence that they give to the expert witnesses is even greater when the expert witnesses have first-hand knowledge. Let's look at the expert witnesses who have spoken out publicly about this issue and who have made their opinion loud and clear. First, we have, and you'll be hearing from him soon, the former director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation under both President Clinton and President Bush, Louis Freeh, who is here with us today. He was tasked with having his organization review all of the people living in Ashraf to determine if there were any terrorists. And as he will tell you, that review found no terrorists. And he has spoken out publicly and has said that MEK should be delisted. Now, that's the head of the FBI in a Democrat administration and a Republican administration. But then we have a former circuit judge and the Attorney General of the United States, who you heard from. The Attorney General was vested with the responsibility during his term in office of being the lead in America's battle against terrorism, being the lead in protecting our country from terrorism. That Attorney General had a very deep responsibility to know who were the terrorists, where they were, who were the threats, where they were, and who weren't. And you just heard again, and Attorney General Mukasey has spoken out time and time again on this issue, his strong belief, based on his observations and all the evidence that was available to him, that MEK is not a terrorist organization. Head of the FBI, former head of the FBI, former Attorney General of the United States. Case closed. But we don't have to close the case based on those two expert witnesses, because we have a whole lot more. We have three decorated and honored generals of the United States Armed Forces who served in Iraq. And each one of them has said it loud and clear that MEK is not a terrorist organization, that the people at Ashraf are freedom-loving citizens of this planet. Three generals who are decorated, who are honored, including General Sheldon. But that's not all of the expert testimony we have. We have Colonel Wesley Martin, who, as many of you know, served as the commander of Camp Ashraf, the U.S. commander, as well as having counterintelligence duties throughout the entire country. He observed Ashraf residents directly, personally. He was in charge of counterintelligence for the U.S. Armed Forces in Iraq. And he has said loud and clear, in fact, from this hotel, he said loud and clear that MEK is not a terrorist organization. That should be enough. But it's not all that we have. We have two bodies that are close allies of the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. These are respected, trusted allies, probably our two strongest allies in the world. They have, by their recent action, given loud and clear expert testimony that they believe MEK is not a terrorist organization by delisting them from their own lists. So we've got expert testimony, incredible expert testimony. We've got strong circumstantial evidence, but that's not all we have. We have a judgment by another court, the Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., which has said that the Secretary of the State Department did not have any evidence to meet their own standard. Expert witness, circumstantial evidence, opinion of another court. That ought to be enough. It ought to be enough. If we follow the law, if we decide this case on the merits, it's overwhelmingly not guilty. Delist the MEK, and let's do it now. I said decide this case on the merits. That's what we ought to do. That's what American justice is about. That's what the American democracy is built on. We need to decide this case on the merits. You know, everyone talks about the two hostages, two innocent people who were hiking and got lost and were taken by the Iranian government into custody, given 8-year prison sentences, made pawns in this horrible battle they're waging against freedom in the United States. Well, we cannot trade off this case against those two good people. They are good people, and they deserve to be free, and they committed no crime. But this case, the delisting of the MEK, has to be decided on its merits. It cannot be a bargaining chip. It cannot be used for political reasons. This country shouldn't get involved in those type of actions. I believe that with all my heart. Now, I want to say a word about Ashraf. The Maliki government tried to justify its horrific actions by saying, these people are on a terrorist list. Well, how, even if they were on a terrorist list, how that justifies shooting unarmed people in cold blood beats the heck out of me. But let's talk about Ashraf for a second. Let's talk about obligations. First and foremost, the United States has an obligation to live up to its word. We gave our word to innocent people who surrendered their weapons based on our word that we would protect them. To me, two of the finest hours of the United States government and foreign policy occurred when President Clinton sent U.S. air power in to stop literally 500,000 Muslim Kosovars from being executed, from genocide in Kosovo. And President Clinton's strategy worked, and those people weren't harmed, and it went on to be a great victory for freedom and democracy. And when President Obama did virtually the same thing with NATO allies in Libya, he was criticized by a lot of people. It won't work. Why are you getting the United States involved in this? Well, I supported him on television at the time, and when it turned out to be a successful enterprise, I said, that's what America ought to be about. If we're about anything, it ought to be the protection of innocent people from being slaughtered. And remember, the key there, the explanation the Obama government gave, the administration gave, was we acted because we didn't want genocide to occur to the people of Benghazi. And there was a chance that thousands of people would have been slaughtered in Benghazi had we not stepped in. So we sent our troops into Kosovo to stop genocide, to stop the slaughter of innocent people. We didn't send troops in, we sent air power. We sent air power into Libya to stop innocent people from being slaughtered. And yet on two occasions, United States troops were ordered to back off and move out as slaughter of innocent people took place at Ashraf. Shame on us. Shame on us. This is the United States. We're about protecting human dignity and human rights. That's been the hallmark of every administration since I've been alive. Shame on us. And now we can't let it happen again. It's great that the UN has made this declaration, as General McCasey said. The United States makes it abundantly clear to the Malachi government that U.S. troops are going to be responsible for protecting the 3,400 people in Ashraf. We gave our word. It's something we should do. And I want to close by telling you something that I said to the first group from Northern California when they were here several months ago. What did the United States lose almost 5,000 of its young people for? For a government like that? For us to turn our back and allow slaughter to happen? I don't believe that's what we fought for. Ashraf is a moral issue, and we have no choice but to do the right thing. Delisting MEK is a legal issue, and the legal case is absolutely overwhelming.
First of all, thank you, Elzer, for having me here today. I'm honored to be part of this group. I agree with everything that's been said, mostly, specifically on the Camp Ashraf and MEK issue. So I owned General Conway for several years and had several dealings with Ambassador Bolton all. I'm going to just talk about a little bit about how I see the general world today a little bit, and then how this fits in with what you're all supporting, and which I agree is a honorable activity. And I think right now we're shirking our responsibility from a foreign policy standpoint to a certain extent, particularly when it comes to Iran. I think Iran is the #1 foreign policy problem in the world today, the nuclear issue in Iran. From a broad foreign policy standpoint, I think that is our #1 challenge in the world today. If you start looking at what's happened in the world, Bosnia, for example, I actually led the first attack mission in Bosnia. But even prior to that, in Udbina, Croatia, we attacked an airfield there. And that was based on atrocities that the Serbs were performing in Bosnia against Muslim citizens there. And when you look back on that, it took a long time for us to actually react. Matter of fact, I think we're immoral in our waiting for that, frankly. It was a UN, NATO kind of led type operation. And they had a situation called dual key. The UN and NATO had to agree we're going to attack targets. And I look back on that as one of the most, I think, disturbing times of my career in the military, where because of political inability to make decisions, we had people that were being killed in Bosnia on a daily basis. Srebrenica comes to mind. I've been to Srebrenica several times. For the 8,000 people killed at one time by the Serbs until, and matter of fact, with UN and NATO troops in place, in this case Dutch troops that were sitting there with tanks that just could not react. That's a moral failure on our part. Kosovo, same thing, although we did better. Almost 1 million citizens were displaced in Kosovo before we reacted to that. And so when people talk about Iran today, and I consider Iran the pariah in the world. I consider them a threat. I don't consider the regime that's there today one bit trustworthy to even talk about negotiations. The last IAEA study, the International Atomic Energy Association study, found that Iran has about 3,000 kilograms of low-enriched uranium, which you need about 1,800 kilograms that can be enriched down to about 20%, up to 90% to make a nuclear weapon. They have 3,000 kilograms. They have plenty to make couple, 2 or 3 weapons. Because once you get to 20% enrichment, which they're going toward, you can go to 90 in a very quick, rapid manner. And in fact, the IAEA today, even in spite of this cyber worm called Stuxnet that everybody's kind of hanging their hat on, that really stopped them. That didn't stop them. Iran is actually enriching more uranium today than they ever did even before Stuxnet. And today, the belief is that Iran can break out to become a nuclear-capable country within 62 days. 62 days is outside the cycle of the IAEA visitation. To make exception based on the hope that Ahmadinejad or the Iranian existing regime will change their minds based on the fact that we're going to acquiesce on one small little thing is kind of naive. So I support the panel. I support what we're doing here. I support you. And I think we as a nation either start leading or we probably won't be a great nation. But thank you very much.